I'm Stephen Marcus Jones. I'm the Chief Executive of the Association for Consulting and Engineering and the Environmental Industries Commission. We're really pleased to welcome you to this special online breakfast briefing with the New Hospital Programme, or the NHP as some of you may know it, which we're co-hosting with the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, known as CECA. Today we'll learn all about the New Hospital Programme and how it will be delivered. This is a really exciting new opportunity which will unlock better, faster, greener delivery for 40 hospitals with design standardisation, maximising modern methods of construction and a centralised procurement approach at its core. I'd like to remind everyone that today's event is for a market audience as part of the NHP's ongoing market engagement process. If you have questions about non-market matters, this probably isn't the appropriate forum to raise those questions. I'm really pleased to see us all coming together from across the industry today. This collaborative spirit will ensure both a positive outcome for society and for our world-class healthcare system. This will mean the NHS staff have the facilities they need to meet future demand. As I said, this event is co-hosted by ACE and CECA, and we have Marie-Claude Hemming, Director of Operations at CECA, with us this morning. And I'm going to hand over to Marie-Claude for her to introduce herself.
Good morning and welcome to the session. And it's great to see so many interested at the early stages of this really exciting build opportunity, which will transform and future-proof how healthcare is delivered in England for the long term. For those of you who don't know us, the Civil Engineering Contractors Association represents the bulk of those companies who build and maintain the UK's public infrastructure. Generally, we build things with outdoors, roads, railways, etc. However, we are delighted to see so many of our members represented here as we support NHP. Before I hand over to our first speaker, I just want to say that there will be further market engagement on these areas at the appropriate time. So please bear in mind when asking questions and we will filter them if required.
Great, thank you, Marie-Claude. So just before we do move on, we obviously have a great panel joining us today, and I'm going to introduce them shortly. But before I do, just need to run through some webinar housekeeping. This meeting will be held in compliance with the ACE competition law policy, which you can see in front of you on the screen. To ask any questions, please drop them into the chat function. I think most of you know how that works by now. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, but please don't worry, as we'll answer any of those that we don't get onto today after the webinar. Don't worry if you miss anything either. We'll be recording this and you'll be able to share that recording after the meeting with any colleagues you wish. So to our speakers, I'm delighted that we have joining us today Emma-Jane Houghton, NHP Commercial Director, Stuart Powls, NHP Head of Procurement, and Vanessa Bold, NHP Head of Supply Markets Management. The NHP team will share a presentation with you, and we're going to ask you to hold your questions to the end of all of the presentations. I'd now like to hand over to Emma-Jane Houghton. The floor is yours, Emma-Jane.
Many thanks, Stephen and Marie-Claude, for that introduction. And many thanks for working with us, working together collaboratively as our main trade associations to pull together this breakfast briefing today. We are very happy as a programme to be here. So we would like to start off by taking you through the New Hospital Programme commercial approach. If we could move to the next slide, please. So just to recap on the programme vision, this is more than just a construction programme. It is about as much transforming the way that we deliver healthcare infrastructure for the NHS as it is about building the 48 hospitals by 2030. So we are a very big complex programme with a wide range of schemes over a long time frame, and we are here to deliver on that programme. We are here to enable a legacy for NHS, and we're here to build the hospitals of the future that will enable that world-class patient care. Next slide, please. Our programme vision has been set by our SRO, Natalie Forrest, a name I'm sure many in the sector will be familiar with. Natalie's background is as a nurse and as a chief exec and indeed led on many of the Nightingale challenges. She leads a multidisciplinary team, and that's very much what we are in New Hospital Programme. We are represented from policy in the department, from a range of colleagues from NHS itself, and we are also programme and construction professionals that come together to work together to address this range of challenges. On the right-hand side, we've set out in a little bit more detail the 5 cohorts in terms of how we have packaged that complex programme. The 48 schemes are broken down into the 5 cohorts. Many will be familiar with the existing schemes that we call in-flight or on-site. We have cohort 2, which are the early schemes, and then this moves through to cohort 3 pathfinders, cohort 4 and 5 for the full adopters, and I'll come on to what that means in a little bit more detail as we move through. Next slide, please. So not only is this a long-term complex programme with 48 schemes that range hugely in complexity and time frame, it is also about a policy programme as we sit in the department and with NHS, and we are working closely with government colleagues around the construction playbook, around IPA priorities like transforming infrastructure performance, and broader policy priorities besides. We are a GMPP. We are also a part of Project Speed, which puts us right up there on number 10 radar. And at the heart of government, we are here to pathfind on some of these government policies, including, for example, levelling up, driving productivity, and really delivering on skills, jobs, and growth. Next slide, please. So the New Hospital Programme is very much about how we are building these hospitals as it is about what we are building as we bring all of that together. Next slide, please. And so that means then, as a commercial team, we have worked really hard to develop a commercial strategy and a procurement approach that is fit in the context of that broader socio-economic ask from Treasury and in the broader delivery of that value profile for this complex programme. So we need a commercial and a procurement approach that is a centralised departure from BAU approaches as we would understand them in this sector. And that is a significant step change for how we think about the design and the delivery, the procurement and the contract management of these hospital interventions. It's all about maximising the use of MMC. You'll have heard us say this before when we commenced the market engagement way back in June, and through our iterative market engagement with different trade associations since then, we've been listening to the market. MMC is absolutely right at the heart of this programme, and we're working with suppliers in order to understand the full opportunity. A commercial strategy and procurement approach that uses standardised components right through to a kit of parts. That's how we'll bring the MMC to life, and that very much is focused around how to enable the delivery of programmatic benefits. So for us as a commercial team, next slide please, that has meant really understanding what that commercial strategy needs to look like to make possible the delivery of those programmatic benefits. And so through our work and through our market engagement and our market analysis, we've determined that following a BAU approach will not deliver these results. And the NHP team more generally has been working really hard on what that commercial strategy should be. So from an investment perspective, if we follow a BAU approach, we won't deliver the programmatic benefits that Treasury wants to see and that we want to see, and funding is predicated on delivering those efficiencies and those benefits. If we followed that BAU approach, we simply wouldn't have access to the capacity that we need. We will be asking more of the market that it's got in its current capacity, and we have key capability gaps in market segments that need to be addressed. So the scale of NHP will require the expansion of that current market capacity and the adoption of new methods and technologies if we're going to really deliver on that value profile and the benefits that I've talked about in those first few slides. A BAU approach would not enable us to achieve the innovation that we target, so we won't build confidence in the market, and we won't attract new entrants, innovations and that forward investment. So we need commercial models that allocate risk more equitably and secure market appetite and provide confidence for that safe contracting environment. And then finally here to note that if we followed that BAU approach, we wouldn't deliver on the productivity drive for that sustainable delivery and commercial model. And it's through MMC that we can deliver these hospitals efficiently in ways that reduce waste and carbon intensity in construction and end use. So all of that has meant that we've had to think afresh about what that commercial strategy should be. And And we've worked out quite early on that there is no precedent really for a commercial strategy to sort of address this range of challenges that I'm presenting. Next slide, please. So NHP's commercial approach must enable the wider benefits of the programme. It must establish and manage NHP contracts to provide the predictability, that's really important for us if we think about some of our legacy projects, of outcomes that are sustainable for suppliers. It must attract, build and nurture a strong, confident and competitive market of suppliers and partners. That's why we're here today. That's why you see us in the market doing this early market engagement, because we recognise that we need to build that confidence and work with suppliers, existing and new, to build that strong competitive market that we need for NHP. The commercial approach must also build a foundation of robust cost management capability for NHP, and that is connected to the predictability of those outcomes, so we can give certainty to our programme and to the investment space, and then deliver efficiencies in procurement, design, contracting and building, which will ultimately get us to the vision that Natalie is so keen to set out, which is all about delivering world-class patient care and hospitals that are fit for the future. Next slide, please. So I've talked a bit about what we've been doing so far, and in fact, you'll have seen us already at ACE and with CECA in the market. So to recap, we launched our PIN back in June of last year. And we've had the most phenomenal response, which has been really encouraging. We've had over 600 responses to our SMART survey, and 69% of those submissions are from SMEs. You'll hear more from Vanessa, who runs this element of market engagement, and will take you through the detail. But from my perspective, that's a really positive, encouraging response from the market. So I'm really pleased with that. Now, we've also undertaken quite a lot of work to understand supply market risk. So the team itself is wider than just the market engagement supply market management team. We also have a part of our team that is looking at how to create the markets of the future that we seek, because we recognise we've got those big capability and capacity gaps that I talked about in earlier slides. And as a part of that exercise, we've looked in detail at the cohort 1 schemes from a delivery and a commercial perspective, to understand what's gone well, to understand what's gone less well, and to extract the learning from that we can take forward. And that's been a really important exercise that's told us about things like contract management, about the sharing of risk and reward, about the T's and C's of certain contracts and what that has meant for scope and design stability, for example. And so we will be taking all of that work and reflecting on that work to build into our commercial approach in terms of how we take this forward. We've also undertaken sector analysis and market soundings. And in fact, together with the ACE, we had a fantastic market sounding exercise back in August of 2021. 139 responses with really detailed intel from the market. So thank you for that. And thank you to ACE for that, for supporting us with it, because it's that intelligence that has helped us to shape the market and the commercial strategy and test it with you. We've also worked with other trade associations to target main pockets of the market. MEP is a really key sector for us. Steel, for example, building envelope, modular, and we've been working with those trade associations to explore the range of possibilities, opportunities, and to learn from suppliers how we can best take these opportunities to market in a way that would widen that participation that we so keenly seek. And then finally here, from a building and consolidating market appetite, we've undertaken more than 20 engagement events. We've talked with over 1,000 unique businesses, and we've dealt with over 1,000 queries via our dedicated SMM mailbox. I was really proud of the team. Great big effort to get the commercial pipeline out in March. That's very recent, and we've had a phenomenal response there too. 1,800 downloads of the commercial pipeline. If you've not seen it, please go and find it, because this is how we'll communicate with the market our commitment to construction playbook and those policies to keep that commercial pipeline updated and published so that you have the visibility. And then, very exciting, supplier guide, not yet published. Vanessa will be announcing that just shortly, but today this will go live. And again, really proud of the hard work from the team here to produce a super quality document that I'm sure you will also be excited to see. Next slide, please. So all of this has basically enabled us to work as a team, to work with the market, to understand our approach and develop what the commercial vehicle for the delivery of these 48 schemes should be. And the answer is the Framework Alliance. So NHP will take to market a framework alliance, and this vehicle will be the vehicle via which all of the hospitals will be delivered. I say all of the hospitals, not cohort 1, because they are already in flight, and cohort 2 are going to market before we get to the framework alliance. So for cohorts 3, 4 and 5, which you can see on the diagram in front of you here, this main vehicle from Q2 next year will be the means of how we deliver the hospitals. It is an evolutionary approach through the alliance, through what we call generations, and those generations mirror the cohorts. It's all about increasing the degree of MMC ambition over time and increasing the attainment of programmatic benefits over time, because we recognise that as a client and as a market, we're not ready now. There is work to do, there is confidence to build, there's investment to generate, and there's IP to develop to understand the real solutions of how we deliver on this complex brief. So the framework alliance with a vehicle where we pool that knowledge and that confidence and that safe contracting environment together to enable us to develop those methodologies and those solutions and build the hospitals in a way that delivers on the what and the how brief. Next slide, please. This slide shows those 5 cohorts that I talked about earlier, and then it mirrors the level of commercial ambition across the cohorts. So it's a simple message, but in cohort 1, we're traditional. That's the vertical supply chain that everyone in the market will recognise as the BAU approach. Cohort 2, we are using a partnering agreement to bind together the cohort 2 contractors, the PCSPs, if it's P22, also some of those potentially going through CWAS Lot 5. But in any event, there is a partnering agreement to bind that together with the trust to look at early targeting of programmatic benefits for NHP and delivering them to time and cost objectives. Then the framework alliance comes online in cohort 3, Gen 1, cohort 4, Gen 2, and then Gen 3 for cohort 5 becomes the legacy model where we've transformed the market in terms of how we think about investment in hospital refurbishment and new builds. Next slide, please. So why alliances? As a quick recap, well, alliances are a long-term consistent relationship between the client and the contracting parties, and that's very much what we need for NHP and our challenges. It's long-term in terms of supporting the commitments, investments in people, technology and learning. It's all about aligned objectives, and that's the detail that the commercial team is working through now in terms of the commercial model and the incentivization that sits underneath this. It's a commitment to equitable risk and reward sharing, because we know that that's what supports R&D and the innovation and the new entrants that we so keenly want to invite in. And it's about that evolving process over time based on collaborative working relationships. Next slide, please. The framework alliance on the left-hand side, that's a rather complex breakdown of how we want to get to design standardization and the common components and commodities that are at the heart of the commercial strategy in the framework alliance. So this is all about designing a commercial vehicle that makes possible standardizing those design elements, that makes possible standardizing the common components and commodities. So for example, instead of buying 200 different beans, we'll buy 4 perhaps. Don't know what the answer is, we've not done the work yet, but the commercial vehicle is there for all of these brains to come together and work out how we deliver on that objective. Next slide, please. The Framework Alliance unlocks MMC, it attracts the new funding and the new entrants, it fosters the innovation, and it builds intelligent and experienced teams and it delivers on the early supply chain involvement that we're so committed to. Next slide. So what does this mean for your business? Well, Vanessa will tell you in much more detail what this means for your business, but as an overview at this point, next slide, please. It's all about the scale of the new hospital programme will very much need to call upon the skills and expertise of companies of all sizes across a broad range of sectors. And so we are really committed to attracting those new entrants in and keeping the participants that we've already got to create an environment where all have an opportunity. And this is an opportunity for businesses to make long-term investments in their capabilities, create jobs, drive growth, and help in delivering world-leading experiences for patients and staff. And we know that we need to bring together the right people and the right teams to foster that innovation and deliver the hospitals of the future. Next slide. Thank you for listening to me. I think, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I am handing straight to Stuart to take us through procurement. Fantastic. Thank you, Emma Jane. Indeed you are. Stuart, the floor is yours.
That's very kind. Thank you. And good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming and sharing in this event. It's great to have the opportunity for us to let you know what our plans are and for us to listen to your feedback in due course. The feedback really helps us in terms of structuring. So next slide, please. So today we're advising you of an opportunity that is coming, really. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of how we want to compete spaces on the alliance that Emma Jane has just talked about. So the Generation 1 Framework Alliance, it's the start of the journey. It's the route to market. It's how you will win work. The Gen 1 Framework Alliance is just that. It's the first generation of an alliance that we'll build over time, focusing on the cohort 3 hospitals. The estimated construction costs well in excess of £1 billion of opportunity there. There are 8 hospitals in cohort 3. I think Emma Jane's done an excellent job, really, of the benefits of joining the alliance. But the principle we're trying to build here is usually when you bid a framework or bid to get a space on a framework, once you're on, there's no guarantee of any work. Here, what we want you to do is bid for a space on the framework, and if you are successful, you form part of the alliance moving forward, and you have the opportunity to win one of the 8 hospitals if you're deemed capable at the point of award. So it's really important that we're building this framework alliance to generate the future ambition for for the new hospitals programme. And most importantly, if we keep doing what we've done, we'll get what we've always got. So we really need to try and expand the market capacity to deliver all the hospitals in cohorts 3, 4 and 5. Next slide, please. So Emma Jane showed this slide earlier on. So cohort 3, Generation 1 Framework Alliance, it sits in the middle. And we are now getting ready to start the competition for that. The alliance, I've been struggling to work out a nice phrase for what it is, but it's really an incubator for the future. So the alliance is a working environment for coming together and trying to find ways of solving the problems that we all have in delivering all of the schemes. Part of the alliance is very much focused on the modern methods of construction, the hospital standardisation that Emma Jane showed in the earlier slide, establishing of common component frameworks as well. So we're looking very hard at how we can standardise componentry and have frameworks for those components as well. So all part of our plans moving forward. Next slide, please. So in terms of what does the competition look like? So a little bit different to normal. So there'll be a pre-qualification, a selection questionnaire, but it's relatively, the bar will be quite low, difficult to articulate that, but what we don't want to do is actually limit the market through a pre-qual process in this instance. What we want to do is weed out those who are outliers in the environment and are not capable. But what we want to do is keep the market as wide as we can and have, we don't want to limit the market at that point. We then move into a 2-lot procurement. So lot 1 is there for you to tender. This is a tier 1 focused activity in the main. This is for you to tender to become what's called a collaboration contractor. So you're winning a space on the alliance. And once you're in that alliance, you're participating in getting us ready for the future and getting you ready to compete in the future generations. Lot 2, that is the competition for the first tranche of hospitals within the cohort 3 environment. So within one competition, you're looking for a space on the framework alliance, and you're also, if you are capable, looking to win one of the first tranche of hospitals as well. So next slide, please. Yeah, so what I'm trying to show here is hopefully lots of purple circles of people that are interested, and we will be looking in a SQ criteria of backwards looking capability experience to sift the purple circles a little to get rid of outliers who are not ready. So that is what our SQ is about. It's not as tightly configured as a normal pre-qualification would be. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is lot one? So lot one is a further sift after the pre-qualification of those credible players who are ready to participate in what I'm showing there as the green box, the Generation 1 Framework Alliance. So what we're trying to do is find players who are ready to participate in the alliance. So you will tender, and if you are successful, you will be given a space on the lot one, and you'll be called a collaboration contractor. Importantly for those eagle-eyed, you'll see that our proposition is that you will be able to be paid for your work done in the alliance. So that is an unusual feature of NHP. So that's our first step. Lot one is to get a space on the Framework Alliance and be called a collaboration contractor. Next slide, please. So if we're willing to pay for element activities within the Framework Alliance, what is it that you might be doing? So we're very, very keen to develop our modern methods of construction. We have what we call the Hospital 1.0, which is our standard design for hospitals, which can be configured to suit the specifics for the 8 Cohort 3 hospitals and in the future. As I said, there's a slight typo there. We say common companies, but it's common components. So we were very, very interested in developing the market in the world of common componentry. So what I'm showing here is typical activities that might happen within the Framework Alliance. But essentially, all we're trying to do with yourselves is for you to generate knowledge and understanding of what we are about, and to generate your investment for your future involvement in the later generations. And for us, we'd be working with you to generate ideas, innovations, all to establish programmatic benefits to enable us to deliver on our promises to government. Next slide, please. So lot two. So lot two elements. So this is the from those contractors that are on lot one. The top 8 ranked contractors who have tendered for a Cohort 3 hospital will be paired with the trusts that are in Cohort 3. So the top 8 are paired. This is all happening in parallel with lot one. So what we didn't want to do was run a grand competition to establish an alliance environment, but then have to run another series of competitions before actually you get any hospital work from it. So what we're trying to do is run lot one and lot two together to enable an immediate allocation of tier 1 contractors to trusts. So we've shown here trusts 1 through to 4, but in essence, it'll be whenever hospitals are ready to be competed, they will slot into this lot 2 competition. So the result of this lot 2 is tier 1 contractors, are paired with trusts, and that pairing is the start of the ECI process. So you'll have tendered fees, you'll have tendered your plans forward for the stage 1, you'll have tendered your key personnel, and that would be the methods of allocating trusts and tier 1 contractors at this stage. Next slide, please. So what this slide is showing is, of course, if there are hospitals in Cohort 3 that are not ready to go at lot 2 stage, then there will be future mini competitions to be undertaken. We'll be following the same process, but allocating and pairing tier 1 lot 2 contractors with the remainder of the Cohort 3 hospitals. We feel this is quite an innovative approach here, and it is quite flexible to suit when the cohort 3 hospitals are ready to be taken to market. Next slide, please. So in terms of timing, so right now we're in April, so we're right in the middle of that February through to October period of getting ourselves ready for the competition. So we're preparing our procurement plans. We're working with market yourselves. We even gave a presentation to the trusts last week articulating this proposition as well, which was received really well, actually. So really positive feedback from the trusts last week. So we're in the middle of that sort of prepping phase, procurement planning phase, getting ready, doing all our governance and assurance and making sure that our upwards governance is done. We'll be preparing and completing our procurement plan by the end of this month. And then the competition phase is planned for the back end of this year, so October through to May of next year. So everything I've just taken you through, and I appreciate a very whistle-stop tour. This competition activity will run October through to May of next year. We're looking to try and accelerate that, of course, we always do, but that's our current plan through to May. So next slide, please. So what does success look like for us? We want to get this Generation 1 Framework Alliance awarded. It is our route to market to build the Cohort 3 hospitals. So we need to get this Generation 1 awarded. The first tranche of the Cohort 3 hospitals will also be awarded at the point of May of 23. So we'll be able to get into that stage 1 ECI process for those hospitals that are ready to compete in Cohort 3. And probably most importantly, we want to create a really attractive alliance. We want it to be established so that the alliance members actually get value from it as well as us getting value from it. A one-sided relationship is not going to work here. It's a generational thing, so we need to start as we need to go on. We need to generate a lot of savings. As always, we need to generate innovation. Innovation will get us to the savings. We want to generate best practice that we can use for the future cohorts. And the alliance members will get themselves fitter and fitter and fitter to compete for the future hospitals as they come on stream in the later cohorts. So I mentioned earlier on, it's an incubator. It's an incubator of ideas. It's a really exciting place to be, I think, for the market. There's a great opportunity to get involved early and to get yourself ready and fit for the future. So I appreciate that was a real whistle-stop tour. I hope you found it interesting. What I'm going to do now is hand over to Vanessa, and I think we take questions at the end, so I'll be happy to try and answer them as we go.
Thank you very much, Stuart. And indeed, on to Vanessa Bold, our final speaker.
Brilliant, thank you. Next slide, please. Excellent, thank you so much, Stuart, and thank you, Emma Jane. That was really, really awesome, and so much information to take in. So as you've heard, oh, I haven't got my video on, sorry. As you've heard, there we go, try again. We are doing things very differently. And as we work up the detail in our approach to this really exciting opportunity, more so than ever, the market's contribution to developing these strategies is crucial. That's you guys, that's everyone on this call. Our engagement with you on this will be iterative. So during the journey, which takes us from today until just before our procurement goes live, we're going to share more detailed information with you at appropriate points, and we're going to listen to your views on what we share to make sure that we're getting it right. We want you to be proactively involved, and we want to hear your opinions. This is whether you see this opportunity as something which you could deliver directly as a tier 1 organisation, or if you think opportunities for you will come further down our supply chain. So it doesn't matter where you think you sit in a future opportunity, we really want to hear your views. They're really important to us. So as we started out this morning with high-level principles, as a first pass, we want to learn what your initial views are on what you have heard today. So step 1 is responding to our indicative appetite survey, and our colleagues at ACE will kindly send you a link to this around noon today. So please take around about 15 minutes or so and let us know what areas have piqued your interest, what you're not so keen on. So we want to hear about both sides, and areas which you would specifically like to hear more from us on. Please also tell us if you'd like to contribute to further market engagement specifically for this opportunity. So that will come out later on today, and hopefully that won't take you too long to complete. And it's really, really important to us to help us understand from this point if we're getting it right, and if it sounds attractive. We've got a really quick turnaround for this exercise, so please do respond at your earliest convenience. And if you have any issues, do drop me a note or Chetna at ACE, and we'll respond to you directly. So step 2, as we move into the detail, we're going to share a much more granular level of information on our emerging procurement plan. And we're going to seek your feedback on key commercial areas through a market sounding briefing exercise. So I'm pretty sure that our colleagues and members at ACE and CECA will be familiar with this, but essentially intelligence that you give to us, so intelligence provided by the market at this point, will feed into the next revision of our procurement plan. So it's absolutely crucial that you share your thoughts with us honestly and candidly. We don't want you to agree with everything because you think that's what we want to hear. We actually want to be challenged, and we want to have all of our areas of thought interrogated so that we can confidently go ahead into our procurement with no surprises. So the views from the market will absolutely be taken into account. So if you're not in agreement with our direction of travel, or for your organisation, if there are areas of contention in our strategy, that market sounding briefing is the absolute point where you signal it to us, and we will take your views into consideration. So moving on from that, step 3 potentially will be a series of one-to-ones, and we'll use the one-to-ones to explore more salient topics with the market in structured and carefully coordinated face-to-face sessions. So there might be some points within our procurement plan that we really need to get into the detail with, and it's in those environments with that face-to-face exchange where we'll be able to really draw out some of that detail. So I'll look forward to sharing details with you on those in due course. Step 4, so within the next month or so, we will be announcing the date of the NHP's flagship event, and we're really excited about this. It's going to be a hybrid event, and so hosting people in person and online. So whilst it's great to see all the little squares in the boxes, we're really looking forward to meeting some of you again in person and providing a really great networking opportunity and an arena for people to learn and share experiences. It will be in September. And whilst we're going to cover a whole range of topics pertaining to the NHP, it's also specifically going to cover the final details on the Gen 1 Framework Alliance opportunity ahead of the formal launch of the procurement. And so we'd love to see you all there. So do expect to see details about that coming through soon. We'll continue to work with ACE and CECA, our brilliant hosts from today, in identifying and developing specific workshops and focus sessions to explore strategic topics. Perhaps I can get some of your initial ideas of what topics you might want to see discussed into the chat while we're here. It'd be good to get a bit of a straw poll of what areas you feel like we could really go to town on. And we'll pick these up with ACE and CECA afterwards. Next slide, please, Chetna. If you haven't done so already, please register your details with us through the NHP Smart Survey. Emma Jane talked about it earlier. We'll use all details that are provided there to share further details about our market developments. And that's not necessarily just on the Gen 1 framework. It could be on a whole manner of things. So if you've signed up to there, we can send you information as and when it comes available. Absolutely download our commercial pipeline. This was published a month ago, and it gives you a real-time understanding of the NHP commercial opportunities, which are in our view right now. It's a dynamic document, so once you've checked it, keep going back at that and checking for updates, and it'll help you understand how we're evolving through our procurement pipeline. When contracts have been awarded, on that pipeline, we will provide contact details for the awarded suppliers. So if you are interested in subcontract opportunities, that will be the place where you can navigate who's in contract, and you can start to think about your routes to contacting them. As Emma Jane kindly noted, we are publishing our NHP supplier guide today, and I'm so excited to share this with you. It covers what we're buying, when we're buying, and how we're buying it, and will give every organisation a bit more information about what you need to do to be involved with us. Today's our first iteration, a bit like the pipeline. It's a dynamic document. It will be iteratively updated with details of policies and procedures as and when we've agreed them. So hopefully you'll find that a really accessible tool to help navigate doing business with us. I believe our colleagues at ACE will share the first version of that with you with that note that goes out at lunchtime today. So you'll be able to get your hands on it from there. And I'm sure there'll be a cascade to other members of ACE and CECA through their networks later on this afternoon. So we really hope that you'll find that useful. And if you had feedback on that, we are all ears. You know, we absolutely want to get it right. Finally, if you want to contact us directly, the email address here takes you directly to my team, where we will endeavour to field all your individual questions. We do have a turnaround time. I think we promised to get back to you within a few days. And so please do write to us if we haven't covered off what you want to hear, or if there's details and questions that you don't feel comfortable sharing that you'd like us to field on your behalf, and we will gladly support you as best we can. Please do keep in touch. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over now to Stephen for the Q&A. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you to all speakers. I'm actually handing over to my colleague, Marie-Claude, who's going to compare the Q&A this morning. So over to you, Marie-Claude.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephen, for chairing, and thank you to our fabulous speakers, Emma Jane, Stuart and Vanessa. So we're now going to start the Q&A section of this webinar, and just a reminder that if you have any questions, and that people have already, please do so via the chat box. So ahead of the session, we asked people what questions they might like to ask if they didn't feel confident about asking for the chat, or were unavailable to use the chat function. For example, they were listening and they were driving. So just to start off, question for the speakers is, does this commercial strategy address all works and not just new build hospitals? For example, enabling works, demolition and other associated refurb and remodelling elements of the schemes?
That's all right, Marie-Claude, I'll kick us off here. So as we presented, the Framework Alliance is the main vehicle for the delivery of the schemes from cohort 3 and onwards. The intention is that it is for all of the disciplines and all of the challenges we seek, but there is still some work to work through around other frameworks and other routes to market that currently exist in government, to understand from our perspective and from government's perspective where it makes most sense to break that down. So the answer is that that hasn't been fully determined. Elements of it will sit within the Framework Alliance. It is broader than just that sort of first tier design and build works contract, but we need to do more work on that to work it through. Stuart, have you got anything to add to my overview?
Yeah, I think absolutely the point, the bulk of the work will be going through that Framework Alliance, but we always have to have an eye on where does best value come from. So part of our job is to establish what is the best route to market for best value, and we'll have to be quite agile as we go to determine our routes. So we will be as agile as possible.
And we'll share, and the intention is that as we work this through, we're very much into working with the market, sharing our progressive strategies. We will keep the market sighted on this, and share that work as it progresses. But as Stuart says, absolutely the philosophy, the commercial intention is that this Framework Alliance is the main commercial vehicle for the delivery of this programme.
Thanks. On to our next question, and something close to my own heart. How do you best see SMEs who may not have the existing capability and or capacity to deliver a new hospital build to get involved with the programme, and in particular on the Framework Alliance?
I'll start us off, and then I'm going to ask Vanessa, who is our resident expert on all things suppliers and SMEs, to pepper my response. So we, from the start, we've been very clear, about our intent. We are here to create a new market that is fit for NHP. That is about existing participants and a whole host and range of new ones, including SMEs. We know that the broader market that we need for NHP is complex, and that you know, to reflect that, we're working with a range of trade associations like Actuate, for example, for the MEP, as well as others, in order that we really target those markets and open this participation up. So I think we've got the right intent, the right philosophy, we've got the strategy and the plan. And my ask of the market is that you engage with us and believe in us and participate. Vanessa?
Yeah, thanks, Emma-Jane. Absolutely, we're really keen to hear SME's viewpoint from the outset and all the way through in developing our strategies. And as Emma-Jane discussed, as our alliance and generational approach evolves, it will make doing business with NHP much easier for SMEs than historically on other major programmes. So we do welcome and support SME contribution. Also, in standing up and developing our scope and our works information, we'll be putting mechanisms in place to make sure that doing business with NHP is easy and does support SME businesses coming forward. Thank you.
Thanks. And finally, to the third of our prepared questions, to support the delivery of NHP and in the timescales required, there is a risk related to the existing market's available capacity to support. How will this alliancing approach specifically help mitigate this?
Vanessa?
We've been working really closely with the MEP sector specifically to help address some of our capacity issues. We started engaging with MEP well in advance of even having the full fundamental principles of our commercial strategy in place, because we acknowledge that the market isn't really ready at this moment in time for our future requirements, and so want to take that sector on that journey with us, warming up the market, telling them about our future pipeline, and making sure that our commercial principles are developed in a way that supports growth and access for MEP organisations. And James, would you like to add anything there?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that covers it. And a lot, as I said in my overview, the capacity isn't there for this once in a generation investment. There are big gaps in market segments and capability if we're going to fully deliver on this what and this how brief as I describe it. And we recognise that, and we've got a team to address that, and we've got market engagement as well as market creation. So I think it's a case of providing that visibility and working the plan and working with those segments, with the experts through the trade associations, to understand what those challenges are and what we can do as a client to position that market segment best for full participation and investment. So at this moment in time, we know that there's a risk and we know that there's work to do, and we need to do that work and work with the trade associations and continue to evolve the plan. And I think that's as strong as approach as we can have at this juncture.
Yeah, I guess that there's another part of that seeks to working with manufacturing, the manufacturing market, and looking at organisations there that have a role to play that are not traditionally seen in construction, and working with organisations that have worked in healthcare that have turned away, and attracting them back in to help bring their capacity back to bear. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So looking at some of the questions in the chat, I'm going to pick one from David Allen, because I think he's the David Allen that is the director at CECA, although it's a common name. He's really welcomes the presentation, and he's really keen to find out a bit more about MMC. So looking towards MMC, what will be done to prepare the wider utility and service support required for the planned hospital installations, given that current infrastructure is already under some duress? Because challenges in this area can have a great impact on project programmes and budgets.
Well, beyond the answers that we've already given on market engagement more generally, I don't know, Stuart, have you got anything that you'd like to add that addresses David Allen's question through our alliance?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have all the answers yet about how that alliance will operate. As Emma-Jane identified in her presentation, we've got a partnering environment for Cohort 2. Within that partnering environment, there's something called partnering information, which describes how that partner environment works. We'll be hooking into that partnering information to create alliance information, and that will describe how we want the alliance to work. So we're currently building how that alliance might work and how it would capture all the MMC aspects that you've mentioned in your question. So we're not there yet, but we know that the alliance has to be a really multifaceted animal to actually get the value that we're looking for. So there's got to be lots of activity within that alliance. Yes, I've focused today on the tier one aspects, but it's got to be a wide church in the alliance. So we'll come back to you later in terms of how that alliance information is generated.
Thanks, Stuart. And I think, the key thing to take from today is this is the early stages, and there'll be further engagement sessions and opportunities to ask questions and find out more as the program, the procurement program evolves. So it's a question from Ewan Graham. I hope I've said that right. They're just talking about looking at net zero goals, which is on everybody's minds in the current time. How does this fit within the commercial strategy and the framework alliance? Is this something that you've been, I'm assuming it's already been thinking about, but is something you unpack a little bit more?
I'll kick us off on net zero carbon. It's absolute, if I didn't mention it, that was an oversight, so apologies for that. Net zero carbon, much like design standardisation, maximising MMC, centralising procurement and commercial, is right up there. Faster, greener, better is right up there as a priority for our programme. Not only that, through Project Speed and through the brief that we've been given as a part of this programme, but it is also central to NHS and NHS targets around net zero carbon. So it's a really core part of this programme and a core part of the challenges that we face in designing and delivering these 48 schemes. We have a plan to work through the alliance to develop new technologies and new solutions that will address the net zero carbon challenge. Beyond that, Vanessa, do you have anything to add from a supplier perspective in terms of our engagement?
Yeah, we recognise that green skills is an area where we need to really work hard to understand the art of the possible and support the market in developing those skills in order to meet our ambition, and both in design and build and delivery of our schemes, the maintenance of our schemes going forward. A big part of our event in September covers the greener aspect, and we'll be exploring the net zero challenge, and we'll be calling on suppliers to support us with their innovation and their ideas to help to help us understand the art of the possible and bring that to life on our programme.
Thanks, guys. So I'm just looking through the questions, I think a lot of which have been answered already, and a lot of which some, we'll learn more as the programme rolls out. So Dennis, my understanding is that slides will be available. So that's Dennis's questions answered. We've had more questions about SME and MMC, which I think we've already covered. Questions about tendering, I think perhaps it's too early for that. It's an interesting question is, will the principles of procurement be passed down the supply chain? The question looking at David Geary's question.
Stuart, that sounds like one for you.
Yeah, I can take that. Yes, as far as we can go, I think is the answer. And we'll be looking to try and maximise that flow down as we move forward. So yes, at the moment, I'm not in a position, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to share all the detail around that, but we are looking to flow down obligations down the supply chain as well. You've seen that flow down in other major schemes, and we're looking to make sure that the client's overall goal doesn't get stuck at the tier one position, that it actually goes and flows down tier two, tier three, and in the future into our supply chain and suppliers, component suppliers as well.
Thanks. It's probably a slightly tricky question for this stages. Another question from Catherine Bradley, who's speaking on behalf of a manufacturer of external cladding materials. Is there an opportunity to engage at the early stages to provide sustainable MMC? Because it's something that is a substantial thing for CECA members. The opportunity to engage early supplier involvement, which helps us sort out any potential problems at the initial stages, rather than sort of backtracking and trying to fix them afterwards.
If I could take that, yes, absolutely, and please reach out to us. I mean, specifically in your field, where the question came from, that's an area that we are unpacking now with regards to some sector analysis to try and understand what the market looks like, and what the key risks are in that area, what are the areas where we can innovate, what are the blockers to growth. And so market contribution from yourselves now is absolutely perfect timing. It will help us understand what the art of the future opportunities look like, and also how the NHP commercial strategy might need to evolve to support the bringing in of those sectors and getting best value, and ultimately getting the capacity and appetite that we need for the programme. So please do reach out and be in touch. We are working with the trade associations that cover most of the sectors. So if, outside of ACE and CECA, if you are members of other trade bodies, you may well be contacted us through those routes as well, but please contact directly. But brilliant, thank you.
Thanks. This question from Amar, I don't know if you could answer it now. Will the framework for procurement be taken within CCS?
CCS is NHP's procurement partner, and we're working with CCS on all of our procurements, and the short answer to that question is yes, it'll be a CCS badged framework.
Another question, maybe too early, will there be a lot for digital integration approach?
Stuart, a few words on digital?
Digital, absolutely. We have a team, a digital team, we have a clinical team, we have a delivery team and a commercial team. Clinical and digital are really the output specifications, the ops concepts of what we're doing here. And the brick and mortar is one thing, but the how the asset works is absolutely vital to us, both in a digital and clinical perspective. So yes, it is. It's the work streams are running to develop their requirements, so that those requirements can be articulated in an output spec way, so that future tier one contractors know what it is they're meant to, well, being required and asked to build to meet our operational requirements. So yes, quick answer.
Thanks. And here's a question looking about will contractors be able to secure more than one opportunity within the same lot, or assumably in different lots as well?
Stuart?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think our position is that we're trying to build the market here. So a lot two contractor would get one hospital. Now, of course, that depends on the size of the appetite for the cohort 3 hospitals. But our premise would be to get one contractor to one hospital and pair the trust with the tier one, such that we can get those 8 working, learning, understanding, and getting themselves more and more fit for the future, and working alongside the collaboration contractors to share the learning as well.
Thanks. Here's a question. I don't know if we'll be able to answer it at this stage. Is the thought that design teams currently working for trusts in cohort 3 and 4 will be, I don't know whether that word is moved across to the collaborational?
I think, Mary-Claude, let me just jump. I think it's difficult to opine on how future cohorts at this moment in and around different determinations will work out. We'll come back to people on that question, please.
Sure, sorry. Another question, something that's come up a lot from CECA members, looking at the whole life cost of the asset rather than initial procurement costs. When we build new hospitals in the UK, the focus is always on the cost of procuring the building rather than the greater costs of the running. And this is something that we see in infrastructure in terms of the cost of building a road rather than the long-term maintenance. So how will sort of long-term value of the asset be embedded into this project?
So as a wider part of the commercial team, within my team, we have deeply experienced cost estimators. They've been working as a part of this commercial team since probably maybe summer last year, late spring last year, summer last year. And we've been building up a cost database, cost estimating database, cost library that will enable us to undertake benchmarking and develop the cost baseline for NHP. So that is, we're starting from, starting from some elements of being able to estimate and then building the maturity of that model through. And that has the ambition to undertake in the end whole life cost development for the new hospital programme. So We're not currently there yet, but it is absolutely the NHP ambition, and the team is working hard to develop the means to be able to do that.
Thanks. And just a final question before we wrap up, and I now got 2 minutes left, so can I keep anything to time? No. Could you give some comments on social value and legacy of the programme?
Absolutely. I can't do this better than Vanessa. Vanessa, do you want to talk to social value?
Social value is predicated in all of our activities. We are currently developing quite a detailed balanced scorecard that speaks about the programmatic benefits that we've set out as part of the programme business case, and that will flow all the way through our procurement activity into delivery. And it sets out all of our values and how we are seeking to deliver against those benefits, which are social, economic and environmental. So social value is fundamental to everything we do, and as Emma Jane's talked about the construction playbook from the outset, the two things are really up front and centre of everything. So the supplier guide does actually give that a little bit more justice than what I have done. So if I can refer you to that for more detail in the first instance, our balance scorecard will come online later on this year.
I think you did a really good job of that overview. And just to reinforce that, for NHP as a programme, in all the ways that I've set out, faster, greener, better, GMPP, really broad value profile. For us, social value is not a sort of add-on to the procurement process, as I've seen it be before. It's absolutely at the core of what we need to deliver in the what and the how ask of this programme. So it's central, as Vanessa says, to what we're here for.
Thanks, everybody. And we're just going to wrap up. I think this has been an absolutely amazing event, and I don't think ever in my lifetime have we ever seen a programme of work looking at the development of 40 hospitals in England. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you all to our panellists as well for presenting such an amazing opportunity of work, which I'm sure everybody will be excited to get behind. So just to wrap up, the NHP team will provide a response to any questions from the audience that weren't addressed in the session today due to time or because they're on areas where they'll need to consult with colleagues. And we've had loads of questions, and it's just, there's such a buzz and there's such an excitement around this. It's great people get back to you on the questions that weren't answered. Just a reminder that the webinar's been recorded, and so we will send you a link so that you can refer back to it or forward to colleagues, as well as a copy of the presentation slides. Also to note that a smart survey will be issued after this briefing session in order to gather your feedback and appetite in the upcoming procurement. So without further ado, and we're only 2 minutes over, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on another engagement soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What a positive start to the day. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye, guys.